to follow up. I'd like to call to order our special meeting for May 21st, 2024.
Mr. Grenier?
Here.
Mrs. Locke? Here. Mr. Petrowski?
Here.
Dr. Poe is absent. Mr. Wood?
Here.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Here.
Mayor Kachuba?
Here. Mr. City Attorney, do we vote them to approve the agenda? Yes. All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda for the joint meeting. We have a second.
Second.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Grenier?
Yes.
Mrs. Locke?
Yes.
Mr. Petrowski?
Yes.
Dr. Poe is not here. Mr. Wood?
Here.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Mayor Kachuba?
Yes. All right, we'll rest till the school board does their part.
So I call to order the Colonial Heights School Board meeting of the City Council, a special meeting for Tuesday, May 21st at 4 p.m.
Mr. Kapinskis.
Here.
Ms. Kachuba is out. Ms. Tremblay. Here. Ms. Woody. Here. Mr. Dees.
Here. We have a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
Take a motion to adopt the agenda. Second. Mr. Kapinskis.
Yes.
Ms. Tremblay. Yes. Ms. Woody. Yes. Mr. Dees.
Yes. All right, as you heard, just FYI, Lisa could not be here today. My son and daughter-in-law had a baby just about an hour and a half ago. Funny story, my son called us last night at 10 o'clock. They live in Dinwiddie and said, "Can you come get Lucy? We gotta get her to the hospital." I said, "Great." So we hustled on down there. We got Lucy, they took off. We got home. About 12 o'clock, we get a message. False alarm, we're going home. So maybe they just wanted us to watch Lucy. So about 2 hours later, my daughter-in-law sleeps and said, "I don't like it. My water for whatever that means." We're going to the hospital. We're off to the hospital, and they just had the baby. On the way, 8 pounds, 9 ounces. Not good. So we're excited. Congratulations.
8 pounds, 9 ounces.
And she took about a week and a half early.
Oh, my.
So, all right, with that, we're gonna have Steve, we're gonna have a working meeting. Meeting. So, any announcements before we start?
I don't think we have any announcements on this.
This council, I just want to thank the school board for hosting this. Does everybody know everyone in the room? Can we just go around the room and just explain who you are? So in case we have some new people here. I'll start. I'm Director Cuba from City of Colonial Heights on City Council.
John Petrowski.
Tina Thacker, Finance Director.
Colonial Heights City Council.
Travis Ridley, Assistant.
Steve, School Board.
Angie Woody, School Board. Melissa Lynch, Director of Finance and Budget for the schools. Christy George, Director of School Services.
Kim Wallace, City Clerk Council.
Stephanie Kern, Clerk of the Board. Betty Rattler, Superintendent. Leah Tremblay, School Board.
Kenny Frenier, City Council.
Betsy Locke, Barb.
Doug Smith, City Manager.
Dan Johnson, Capital Operations Division, Colonial Heights Police. Bobby. And Bobby Wade, I'm here to eat.
Over here.
JP DeJockman, I'm Director of Transportation for the school system. See everybody.
Sorry, Becca Lynch. I'm Erica Schwartz. I'm the manager for Petersburg Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services.
All right, so we'll go ahead and just start the meeting. Let's see if you have anything else.
Yep, we have no agenda.
All right, the first one is the mental health and services options, and I'm going to turn it over to Doug Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give you a little bit of overview on some things about our current mental health service provision that we're under the state code, and then a little bit of an update on some discussion that staff has had with Chesterfield County, and then Becca Lynch, our Office of Youth and Human Services Administrator, has been involved in that discussion. And after I give my overview, I'll turn it over to her for any additional comments she may have, and then we can open it up for questions as well. So as you all would know, the city is currently part of District 19, along with Dinwiddie, Emporia, Greensville, Hopewell, Petersburg, Prince George, Surrey, and Sussex. And this is actually under a provision in the state code, which is that every city or county needs to establish a community services board either by itself or in combination with other cities and counties. And it goes on in that section to talk about the types of services being provided: comprehensive mental health, developmental, substance abuse services within a continuum of care, that the community service board would act as a single point of entry for those kind of services. So city staff back in the fall had a meeting with Chesterfield County administration to discuss mental health services. The idea of possibly moving to Chesterfield. Mental health services has come up before, and obviously we do have a lot of shared services in terms of social services and other services as well. So we had a discussion with Chesterfield County, and they had provided us with some follow-up questions that Becca sent one to District 19 after we worked on that a little bit. They were able to provide us with some information back, and then Becca was able to provide that information. And she had a recent discussion with their director in Chesterfield that's over the mental health services. And their director indicated that they would really want a proposal of what services the city would be looking for. So Becca is kind of going through what's maybe looking at the services they have as listed on their website, kind of reviewing that, and maybe kind of need to do a deep dive into that to some extent, potentially there. At this time, we haven't, as a city, made a decision to approve moving forward to try to pursue Chesterfield Community Service Board instead of District 19. But what we will move forward to is try to get to the point with Chesterfield that we can find out what would that cost if we did want to make that transition. So that would kind of be one of the next pieces to find out. Once we get that, we'll certainly brief City Council, have some discussion with City Council, keep the school administration updated on that as well. One kind of important piece in the process, that there is another state code provision that indicates that a city or county has to provide 2 years notice to other cities and counties to withdraw from a community services board unless the other cities and counties agree to an earlier withdrawal. So that would be something that would be discussed in the process should a decision be made to move forward as well. One additional point I thought that may be of interest that Becca learned from her discussion with Chesterfield is that they don't provide school-based therapy in their schools, but they do outline on their website various services that they do provide, and it goes from birth up to 18 years of age, and including case management, family therapy, group therapy, individual therapy for child and adolescents service teams is how they outline it. That's a brief overview that I had, and wanted to turn it over to Rebecca for anything else you might want to add to supplement what I had to mention there.
I think all of that is information. One thing that, you speak louder, one thing that I would mention is, it would be a huge transition to be able to switch community service boards. So it would be a quick overnight process. And one of the things that I think about is, limitations and of course the benefits. And so a lot of our folks that access services through District 19, they already have transportation issues. So I'm already kind of thinking through the process, if we are able to make that switch, what services could we also put in place to help, with transportation in case they needed that.
At this point, we'll open up to any questions or further discussion.
So with this District 19, do they have an appetite to keep us? Is there a place of they asking for more services? with this?
I mean, we could always have a conversation with them as to what services look like now and if we need additional. I'm sure that would come at a cost. Everything, there's a dollar amount attached to it. I know one of the challenges that they've been experiencing really since the pandemic, maybe even a little before that, is staffing shortages, and that's kind of affecting everyone, across the board. But I think, more than likely they would be open to that conversation. I don't know how they would be able to accommodate it.
I have a question, Doug. You mentioned that they service 2 to 18.
That's just part of, I was just focusing on, as far as Chesterfield goes, I was just focusing there on the youth services portion of what they do. That's obviously not gonna be all that they do. I was just kind of tying that to the part about how they handle their school student therapy.
I couldn't tell, would we still rely on District 19 for adults over 18, or
If we made the move, it would be moving all the services. That's how we may even have to, but that's how I would envision it happening if we had made that.
You met with Dr. Casey.
He was one of the ones we met with, yes.
The county administrator for Chesterfield. He was not opposed if everything lines up correct to take that transition.
I know he gave us some feedback for like question we might want to ask them. What I can say is they definitely aren't interested in adding additional localities beyond us, from what I would say. And we're in kind of a unique arrangement there because we already have so many other services. Yes, sir.
Are we lacking anything that we're not getting from District 19?
I know concern has come up on the school side before, and some school representatives might have some feedback in that regard. And Becca has given me some feedback as well. There, some concern, and Becca, feel free to add, that might come up in terms of was somebody able to reach somebody, when they were reaching out at that time, just kind of as a general statement, but others would have more information to add than I would.
So I know on the school side, Christy and the mental health committee wrote a grant, and in the initial part of the grant for, what was that, mental health services grant for the state. And initially D19 was named as, and they agreed to be able to provide school-based services. But when it came down to it, they were not able to provide those because of staffing concerns. And just in my experience this year, I had a couple times on, not intervention type issues, but a couple times, that they had said they were coming, like with our anti-vaping student superintendent committee, they were supposed to come and they didn't show, but, I guess if you're not coming, I always appreciate a phone call, hey, we're sick or whatever. But I don't know if 1 or 2 times is enough to base anything on, but that's just been our experience this year.
And if the staffing is an issue across the board, like I'm just wondering, is it really better on the other side?
Well, and that would be part of going through the services that they offer, what range of services, what the cost would be. Certainly a part of it would, reviewing that, review with department staff that we want to get feedback, like for example, law enforcement, since they interact with those services as well, and allow them an opportunity to review those Chesterfield services as well to get their feedback too. So we certainly can do a review of all those options.
Do we have a sense of, would we be a higher priority as a locality with District 19 versus Chesterfield? Like, how would each one view us as kind of a priority to serve?
I
guess that would be feedback that they would have to give really in terms of that.
That's probably hard to answer. Some of the things that Chesterfield has requested that we get information on is like actual number of clients served, what types of services they need. Chesterfield would have to, I'm sure, hire additional staff. When I look at kind of the big picture of Colonial Heights transitioning over, I just think about it as our population is 17,000, and I know that not all of them would seek services, but it could certainly be a possibility that a good amount of them might.
And I can chime in and offer some perspective from a parent's point of view. One of the other services that District 19 is involved with is developmental disability services. And for many, many years, it's been an issue and a topic of discussion in local advocacy groups that when parents contact District 19 for things from early intervention for a child with developmental delays, or getting information about the Medicaid waivers that are distributed by the state through the CSBs, they are often completely ignored, given false information so that they don't pursue it any further. And it's been an ongoing, well pre-pandemic issue. So that's a whole other ball of wax that's not necessarily, overlaps with the schools, obviously, but another way in which our citizens can be much better served by that.
For those of you that have had contact with District 19, either clients or personnel, you will discover that their ability to react quickly and effectively is compromised by the fact that they have a large obligation or a large geographical area. They have very limited. I'll leave it at that.
Even though it's just for
Different thing. District 19 charge that they have is so broad, and the requirements of the localities they serve are so great that it is difficult for them to meet the needs of many that come service. Maybe no better anywhere else, but I'm just suggesting that has been the experience of most people that have been contact with District 19.
John, you mentioned lack of resources. Would it be worthwhile if we brought in District 19 and have representatives from the school and the city to say, here's where you fall short? I mean, is that something that you don't want to consider until we can get further information from Chesterfield County? Make that transition. I'm open from the city side.
We met with them in the fall, and they came and did a presentation. And said they would do the things, Not sure that we've seen follow-up on the back end as indicated.
So you don't think it would be worthwhile?
I'm not saying it would be, I'm always happy to meet with folks, but I just,
So I think, are we in agreement that we should continue to pursue?
At this point, it would be in the information gathering stage to see what would it look like if we did make this transition, and then once that information is ready, we'll be able to report back.
I'd be interested in seeing comparison services, and then we can get any feedback from the community they provide to say, like, do they have the same process with them as we have with District 19? I'm sure they're not just trading one product for another.
Or is it more?
Yes.
All right, any other questions on that particular topic? All right, we can move on to the next one, the transition program for students with special needs. I know Heidi and Steve brought this to the agenda, and when I saw that, I indicated that I sit on the board of directors for Creator Workforce Development. So I called Tabitha Taylor, who's the new executive director for Creator Workforce Development. And I said, do we have any programs for those that are transitioning out of our school system to find employment that have special needs? She said, well, I can bring in an individual that can brief us, and I know you said you had Christy was going to bring some info. But in the meantime, I got Erica Schwartz right back here. She's going to come and talk to us a little bit. Erica is the manager and has oversight at the Petersburg office for DARS, It's a Virginia Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services. So at that time, we'll let Erica come up first and give us a little briefing on what they have to offer.
So I brought 2 flyers, and first and foremost, thank you for having me. Where would be the best to stand? I guess over by the screen here. So thank you for inviting me to join you all, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm the manager of just one of many DRS offices across the Commonwealth. The Petersburg office is where I'm housed, and we of course serve Colonial Heights as well as the other surrounding localities. And how many of you are, do any of you work within Colonial Heights High School? No, just the school board. So we have a dedicated counselor who serves Colonial Heights High School as well as the other area schools. And I would like to start there because I think it paints the picture of the continuum of services that we can provide. And I apologize, you might hear interchangeably DARS or DRS. DARS is the umbrella, right, the agency, and I work for the Department for Rehab Services. So my background and the background of a lot of the counselors on our team is either rehabilitation counseling, which again is just supporting people with disabilities and pursuing employment goals, as well as for our educators, social workers. So we've got a pretty varied background just to help support individuals with disabilities to pursue whatever their work goals may be. So one of the flyers, the colored one, is documenting all the different services that we can provide to students. And when I say students, I mean high school students as young as 14 years old. So 14 and up is the only requirement. And of course, they do need to be in high school. We have had requests to work with some middle schoolers. It's just typically really early to start working with them at that point. So once they get into high school, though, we can start providing a variety of services. And it might be group, it might be individual, it might be within the school, it might be outside of the school. We can individualize services as well as go into classrooms and provide a group lesson. So there's a whole host of things that we want to do before they exit high school, and the purpose of that is so that they've got a transition plan. Now, that being said, if someone does not come to DARS while they're still in high school, but they've exited, we can still serve them. And that's one of the things we try to highlight, is that while the school might be, you've graduated, you've exited school, and now you're leaving, so your services end, ours don't have to. But our services are completely optional, voluntary. So if someone would like to just receive, one service or some stuff while they're in school and then close their case, they are welcome to do that. So we've got the school-based stuff that is hopefully what we're doing, and you can see there's on the front of that sheet there where it lists the different services. Those are the core services that we provide to students. And so, for example, job exploration counseling is on there. Workplace readiness. So these are all things that we want to do to help students explore the world of work. It's not about, we might do some aspects of career planning, but we want them to be able to explore, try out, find out the things that they like, the things that they don't like, and then make that plan. So after school, are we looking at going into a training program, maybe a 4-year university, maybe just going to work, right? So we will work with the students to help them develop that plan and set their job goal. So when you were asking about services that we can provide after students have graduated, there's a whole host of things. So the other flyer that I provided is just a very broad overview of some of the VR services, which just means vocational rehabilitation. Students may also receive some VR services, but they're primarily for adults. So again, it's really just on an individualized basis, whatever they might need to determine their job goal, determine accommodations that might be needed, to identify training programs, to look into financial aid. There are such a variety of things that we can support them in doing, and also vend out to provide certain services. So for example, if you've got a student who is graduating and they want to go into the world of work, perhaps there's someone who has had an IEP throughout their entire education and has needed a variety of supports and accommodations to be successful in school. Maybe we decide to get them a job coach. And a job coach is someone who is going to help them, apply for jobs, search for jobs, go on interviews, network, maybe go to job fairs, and then also train them on the job once they're hired. So there's that level of support. Not everyone needs that. So again, that's something that we work with them on, assessing. But that's just one example, so we can help with job placement and skills training. We do have a number of students who want to pursue either some type of higher education. So we can support them in identifying all the things that they need to do to apply and be accepted through funding. Sometimes we're able to fund that. Of course, there's paperwork, but it is something that we've been able to do. And it might even mean going to CCWA and getting some vocational training. So really, and in addition to that, I should add, we have a whole host of services that we can provide in-house. So we can help with resume development, interview prep. We have a variety of different workshops that we have out of our office every month. So it's all of those things. We do a mock interview panel just to get, those are becoming more and more common. So it's a skill, and so we offer that monthly. People can come back as they want. We, as you had mentioned, we're a partner of the Creator Workforce Center, or the Virginia Career Works Creator Region. And so we often bring groups to the Workforce Center to use their computer lab. We will get them with the BEC so that they can enroll with them. There is another provider, another partner as part of the Workforce Center that also provides services to youth and young adults. And I don't know how familiar you are with Curleen Patrick, but they actually have, and they're looking for new ways to utilize these, but they have VR headsets there through their program that is specifically for career exploration. So it's some different career clusters, different industries, and we brought our most recent job club group there and had about 8 individuals get to try some different jobs using virtual reality, which was pretty cool. So sometimes they have access to services that we don't, but we can partner together. We also work closely with U19. We work with social services. We have a huge initiative right now to support returning citizens. So we're partnering with Petersburg Probation and Parole to just try to rapidly engage returning citizens with employment services. So we can serve anyone with a disability. It does not matter the type of disability. What we look for is what type of support, accommodations, what needs might someone have to be able to prepare for, get, and keep a job. And we will help someone to determine that. So let's just say that you've got an individual who doesn't have a diagnosis, but maybe, I don't know, their parent, whomever might suspect that something's going on, but there's no existing records, right? They've never been served anywhere. We could have an evaluation completed to determine if someone perhaps does have an official diagnosis. And of course, beyond the diagnosis, again, what do they need? What do they need to be successful? So I've spewed a lot of information at you, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some things like Wilson. I didn't even mention Wilson Workforce Rehabilitation Center, so I'll do that before I take questions. So the school staff is probably familiar with WWRC, some people call it Wilson, or Woodrow, but we've changed the name. So this is a center that's affiliated with our agency, and it's out in Fishersville. So if you've ever been driving down 81 or 64, you've probably seen a sign that says, Wilson Workforce and Rehab Center. That's a part of DARS. And the center has services available for current students, but also adults. And typically the students will go just for vocational exploration. So maybe an evaluation, looking, where their skill sets are at, what their interests are. They can also do driving evaluations. We have a lot of people who want to get their learner's permit, but maybe struggle Once you fail 3 times, you got to take a class. So they have not just the evaluation, but you can also go for a whole driving program. So they will help you to get your learner's permit, and then if that goes well, they'll support you in getting your driver's license. So they offer behind the wheel. And for all of these services, unless it's just a day program, everyone stays at the center. So it's kind of like a mini college campus. And if you've never been, they offer tours, and you can always get in touch with me and I can help to coordinate. But it's really neat. So for those individuals who perhaps college is not a great fit, but they want some of that experience, obviously in addition to job training, this is a great option for many people. So once they've graduated, again, I mentioned driving, but they also have a number of vocational training programs. Auto mechanics, they've got a healthcare, so support with PCA and CNA. They've got landscaping, forgive me, these have changed, manufacturing technology, so you can get your MT1. And probably a couple of others that I apologize I'm blanking on, but that's another internal option. And the best part is that the cost is extremely minimal to clients and their families, right? So if someone, let's say, had a high income and we were not able to pay for the cost of that, the most that anyone would pay is $100 a month. And that is for food, shelter, training. So it's pretty amazing. And we're very lucky. There are only about 8 of these centers across the entire United States, and Virginia happens to have 1 of them. So with that being said, thank you for your patience and your attention, but what questions can I answer or clarify?
One.
Yeah.
I know you said support begins at age 14. Is there an age limit on it?
There is no age limit.
So it can be anywhere on a.
We absolutely serve some individuals who are receiving retirement benefits, but it's not enough, to support their livelihood, so we will help them find work.
Good.
Yeah, sure. What other questions?
Can you help us understand a little bit how just touching back on the previous topic, how your work intersects with District 19 and the Medicaid waiver?
Yes, so I'm trying to think about how to start this. To be clear, those who might be eligible for our services, because it is an eligibility-based program, meaning you need to have barriers to employment to obtain our services. And barriers to employment could be difficulty reading, perhaps interpersonal skills. It could be self-direction, meaning maybe someone needs someone there to support them or some type of assistive technology to keep them on task, et cetera, et cetera. So that being said, we absolutely serve a lot of individuals with serious mental illness, substance use, intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, et cetera. And so when we have individuals who are receiving services from D19 as well as us, we do everything in our power to work together with them so that and same thing with the school where we don't want to duplicate services, we want to supplement, right? Same thing with Go for D19. The best thing that we've got going out of in partnership with D19 at this point is called a program called iWork. And it is a collaboration between DARS, D19, and one of our service providers, Career Support Systems. And they work to rapidly meet the needs of this individual, which, as you can imagine, might be housing, medication, counseling, it could be food stamps, et cetera, right? So they work together to meet those needs and to rapidly place them into employment. So to the extent with which we work with them with waiver, that varies, right? And it will vary per client because even though you might have 10 individuals with a waiver, they might need different services from that waiver. We have tried to do what we can to navigate that world because we don't, we work with individuals who receive a waiver, but we don't dabble in, that bit exactly. So part of it is trying to figure out what can a waiver provide versus what can we provide. And there are occasional times where we can braid services or funding together to provide more, comprehensive support to someone. And when we find that we're working with an individual who really would benefit from a waiver, we will share that information with them. That's more or less the extent though. Yeah, sure.
Any other questions for her? Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out.
you.
I think the purpose was we wanted to connect your agency to the schools.
I'm thrilled to be a part of the conversation. I also have business cards, and you have my email address as well, so I'm happy to share either of those. And I'm very curious to hear where the conversation with D19 and Chesterfield CSB goes as well, because that will certainly impact us as well. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So the reason I wanted to include that on the agenda was because of the overlap in Indiana, obviously, between we were transitioning students with disabilities out of schools, they're coming into the city. And we want to make sure that they have what they need to succeed when they've aged out of education services. And so recently, VCU's partnership with people with disabilities has been visiting different localities in the state to facilitate conversations about how parents can best empower their kids to identify and reach for career goals, how high schools can better prepare kids for life after graduation, and how the localities that surround them can help launch them into their independent future. And one of the topics that came up was transportation is a continual barrier for people who, if their disability prevents them from, as you mentioned, getting a driver's license, they may be ready, willing, and able to work, but unable to get there. And again, this touches back on the District 19 thing, because the waiver offers an array of supports if you can get it, if you can get phone answered. And it includes things like housing support and things like that, just to help launch a young adult into their adult life. So it was an interesting conversation, and I was really delighted to see you there, Mayor Kashuba, because I know you understand this is a shared interest. But unfortunately, we ended up at different tables, so I'm curious to know how the conversation went at your table.
It went really well, and I think one of the big hurdles is transportation.
Yeah.
And I know we offer transportation for seniors. When you go to the doctor's, grocery store, and pick them up at their house and take them, as long as it's within Colonial Heights, and maybe now a little bit creators for. But I was told that at one time we had a program that we picked up individuals with special needs, take them to their job. I don't know how long ago that was. I don't know if anybody knows the history of that, but we know long history of that. And maybe that's a hurdle that we can talk about under this council, figure out how to be a part of it.
May I comment on that if that's okay? Sorry. So that might have been before my time. We have benefited from the pay as you can here, pay what you can with the rec center transportation that you mentioned, because it's for people with disabilities and older adults. And that's been amazing, because one thing we deeply struggle with is transportation to work. Medical appointments, as long as they're insured, they've got insurance, is usually okay.
Right.
But that we work with so many people who desperately want to work and can, and we just cannot find a sustainable way to get them there. Because we do have door-to-door transportation providers that we, will pay to do that, but because we will eventually close someone's case once they're stable, doing well at work, that would be a cost that they would have to take on their own. And that might be over $100 a day for work, and making minimum wage.
Right.
So it's a huge issue.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If someone is disabled to the extent that they cannot drive a vehicle, what sort of jobs basically would be available in the vicinity for such a person?
Oh gosh, there's so much. So really, if you think about being able to safely operate a vehicle, that's one set of skills. But it could mean that someone is really good at organizing things, right? So stocking, if you think of walking into Walmart and you want to see things are forward facing and the shelves are full, right? You might think about perhaps working in a kitchen. You're doing prep work or dishwashing. And it's not that individuals who cannot drive can only do entry-level jobs, because that is not the case. But as I think about some of our young adults who perhaps they could develop the skills to drive, but at this point, being a young adult, in their awareness of other people is more the challenge, right? So they have plenty of job skills, and we've successfully placed many adults and young adults in different types of careers without having a driver's license. Many of them still go to college. I mean, we actually have multiple individuals who have pursued a master's degree, but they have a physical impairment that prevents them from being able to drive. That's another thing we do also is through driving evals, we have individuals with various pretty significant physical disabilities, and perhaps they need modifications in order to drive. We can help to assess that and possibly cover the cost of that.
Other than the service industry, food service, healthcare, and absolute sanitation workers, are there any other jobs that can at higher rate other than just what most people would anticipate to be entry level, or jobs that are minimum wage? Do you have any success in making placement for people in somewhat more challenging and higher pay?
Yes, I think that what you end up facing is needing technical skills and certifications, right? And so that still could mean, though, that you've got an individual with a disability who is unable to perhaps drive, but has academic skills that would allow them to pursue, a credential training program. So we have, manufacturing is a huge industry here. We've had people go and get their MT1 and work at some of the local places. We had Triple Glass, forget their full name, but they're based out of Petersburg, and they're a huge employer that looks for, we've worked with a number of companies who will train. So you start at base level, but then they will train their employees. Skookum out of Fort Gregg Adams also does that. So we've had some individuals who have started working in landscaping or grounds maintenance, and then have worked their way up to machinists, electricians, maintenance staff. So there are opportunities out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the other things, Leo, at that meeting with VCO, I tried to connect them with John Bradford, who's the chamber, he may know employers that hire those with special needs.
Yes.
Virginia Gateway, Keep Boswell, they're an economic development organization, and they're bringing businesses in our locality, as well as Fort Gregg Adams. The contacts, I can give them contacts.
Yeah, our table began our work by listing local businesses that we knew hired young adults with developmental disabilities, and we were really pleasantly surprised to see how many we came up with. We've already got people who understand the importance of it, and so it's just a matter of connecting them to some of the other folks. And Mr. Wood, I want to address your earlier question by just saying that came up in our conversation as well. There's a perception that these programs can help someone with a disability find a job as long as they're not like the back disabled. But it's actually not true. I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen in the work you do, people with many levels of complex needs. And the example that I gave to sort of eliminate the situation is someone you all may have seen if you've eaten at our local Panera. It's just moved locations to somewhere else near the mall. But if you go in there 2 or 3 days a week, there's a young man named Justin who works at the door there. Justin has severe cerebral palsy. He spends his whole day in a power wheelchair. He speaks through an electronic device, and he just works as a greeter at Panera. And so when you come in, he hits a button on his device and welcomes you to Panera. And as you're leaving, he hits a button and it tells you to have a nice day. And it doesn't sound like a huge contribution to the operations of Panera, but there are many people who go to Panera just to see Justin. And so it's boosting their bottom line in demonstrable ways. So that's a good example of how it's not just small little boosts sometimes. It's not just people who maybe, have a disability that's easily overlooked. It's people who in generations past would have been looked on as having absolutely no purpose at all. And with the right supports in place, they find plenty of purpose. And the bottom line is, these students and their families don't want to be completely dependent on social services their whole lives. So if there is a path to employment that they can be proud of and productive in, they want to know what that is. And it's, moves us as a city to light it for them.
One other thing, could there, as far as transportation, could the student, transportation services, those vehicles, help out with transporting back and forth to employment and so forth? Because I know we got the buses for the school, but we have this
So
student.
Christy can probably speak to that. I know at one point we had a cooperative agreement with Goodwill, and some students worked at Goodwill during the school day,
Mhm.
and transportation was provided.
But I mean, the transportation, those vehicles that were on the student transportation, could they be utilized to take, these people to a job, pick them up and so forth? Because they're on the road anyway.
I guess provided they're still in school.
Well, if they meet the criteria, I think that would be, but I mean, I'm wondering, I think that's state sponsored as well, from the student transportation. Or does the city provide it all? I was under the impression that the state kicks in on that, for that, because I want to say I've seen at least 3 or 4 vehicles during the day, picking up, taking to school in the morning, picking up in the afternoon, taking them home, and so forth.
So my initial thought is that, and Troy is under the weather and apologize for not being here, but I would want to check with him
Okay.
on the insurance side of that.
Yes. Because they're out there anyway, so why would you use them?
And we'd have to certainly work with transportation to make sure of the availability.
Sure. Thank you.
But then sound like something, continuing conversation on is what our transportation options.
Right.
Schools and city.
Right.
How did you afford to add this?
Christy just had a couple little things I think she wanted to add about what we currently are working on in terms of transition for our students with disabilities.
So it was meant to be a little bit shorter bulleted list. You could just read it at your leisure, but I'll just talk like from the greater and then work down to the smaller in-house opportunities we have. But one opportunity we have is Project Search, and that is a partnership with Liberty Schools, Prince George, Colonial Heights, DCU, DARS, and Fort Bragg Adams. It's at Fort Lee. So we send 2 to 3 kids. There's an application process. There's a hands-on what's the best fit process to come up with. Each school gets to select 2 or 3 students each year. It's a year-long program. Colonial Heights is actually the fiscal agent, so we have the teacher in the para. They have a classroom space at Fort Bragg Adams, and they participate in 3 different internship opportunities on site. And it's at the end of each period, they do a reflection of direction, and to see the growth in the kids is just absolutely amazing. I was just listening to one before I came in here at 3. A gentleman had just finished his last one. Graduation is in June, early June. But with DARS, ECU, we work to get these students employed after this internship as well, and that has happened. So they go from, it could be the bowling alley, the rec center, the YAGs, fitness center,
Golf course.
a little, I don't know, there's a restaurant. Check out Hideaway or something. I don't know.
And there's a snack bar at the golf course.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Just enjoying myself, go out there and do some.
It's
They're
a wonderful
doing a great
opportunity.
job.
Yeah. And the teacher does a great job opening new doors there, more partnerships, because one you may not be able to go to one place, but we have to find somewhere else. So we have that, and that's generally after they graduate. That's after they graduate here, then they go there. The other thing while they're here, junior or senior, and this is funded through CSA, 2 to 3 students a year will go to North Star Career Center, and that's an IPT decision. housed at Richmond, program in Richmond. They go there for the morning, and it's just a semester. But they can choose to be business technology, construction, hospitality, materials, veterinary assistant. And that's with the same goal too. They don't have to do this and then go to Project Search, but this is all leading them to be big. And we've been doing that for several years. And I don't know that there are many schools in the surrounding that use that. It is through CSA. And then previously, pre-COVID, we had students would go out to Goodwill, partnership with Goodwill. We're trying to get that back, and this is where Project Peace, what Mr. Moon was talking about. We have a 5-year grant, and that's where these community conversations have started. And we want to get that partnership, the community-based employment experiences. And that's where students have a class, and then they go out, and we would transport them to Goodwill, but they have to have support while they're there. So wherever they're going, we have to kind of you have to be strategic about what you're doing. But in the meantime, we started a little in-house coffee snack cart where the students are running it in the school, in high school. And then partner with DARS, and they come to the school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Chris? All right. Yeah, thank you, Erica, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to move on to the next one. Chief Oswald's here to give us some information on speed cameras in schools.
Well, thank you to Colleen first. I almost had a mental breakdown. She was quick to set up. So I did talk to, we all know the area that we're talking about here at the high school, between the high school and Tech, got the potential for some situations. I know we have had one student catch recovery. And so just trying to come up with alternative ways that we can slow people down in this area. This has been an issue when I cross over with somebody in class over there for typing when I was in high school. So this has been going on since. With the development of some new laws that we have, it allows these companies to come in that operate speed cameras, speed enforcement cameras in school zones and in work zones. So Colonial Heights is unique a little bit because, especially like the middle school, high school, and Hussing, the lights flash all day long. And they pretty much flash all summer long with summer school in the session. And so this one, Blue Line Solutions, spoke to this company. It's a different company than Petersburg is using. I don't know if anybody's been down Johnson Road or been on past the Governor's School on West Washington Street. Soon coming to 68 schools in Chesterfield County. But this company came out and did a speed study in 3 locations: middle school, high school, and Hussing. I figure what better way than to have them come out and do the studies instead of once. They looked at the dates of February 28th, the 29th, March 1st, March 4th, and March 6th. Those 5 days, school was in session, the lights were flashing. And what they found was kind of good signs, but not so much for them. So we'll start here at the high school. For those 5 days, 11,180 cars came. That's both ways. It's a violation both ways. They checked any vehicle, they consider any vehicle speeding above 10 miles an hour. So when it hit that 11th, so for 25, at that 36, well, at that 36 mark, counting in that speed. During the flasher times, so then they filtered out nighttime. 3,532 cars came through. Of those, 411 were before speed. That's a really small comparative to, I'll just throw it out there, 460 in Dinwiddie, where the Walmart distribution is. They have 25,000 violations a week. So, my fear would be even if we still wanted to do it, those are probably 411 of the same speeders. They're in and out of this neighborhood, it's the same. At some point, people are gonna, they know where it is, they live here. We're not getting the people that are just passing through, getting marked up. So maybe we'll do something more with education, more with officers enforcement, maybe some better signage. I think I sold tickets to the underground tunnel when I was in high school. For anybody that's a freshman that went. So just to give you the other numbers here, the middle school, total of 6,600 cars when lights were flashing, 2,100 cars, 73 violations. And then, now, that one there might be a little bit more transient population because you have people cutting the back way from Pittsburgh going to the mall through that Condo Road area, or from the mall and back. The other one was Tussing. So just the flasher times, 2,800 cars in those 5 days, 85 violations. So these are probably, well, more likely the residents that live up in that area, as well as service providers, Amazon, UPS,
Teenagers.
Care, and Mr. Smith.
Some teenagers.
So to me, it was worth at least taking a look at. We're obviously not going to be able to slow down the traffic right here, because we do know that folks want to. The one thing this study did not show was the speeds above them. So we could have had somebody, in this study, we could have had somebody run through flasher times at 70 miles an hour. Now, I do have the ability to put over equipment out there on our own, but at this point, it's probably best to handle what. I'm looking for suggestions. We are out here catching speeders, especially in the morning. We have had an issue over here on Yorktown with parking that we just hopefully resolve. So we'll see how that goes.
A lot of feedback from the residents, so thank you very much.
So, long time coming, but I'm glad we got that done for them, thanks to all those folks in the street.
I have a question. When we looked at using cameras for speeding and such at the intersection of Temple and Conduit, there was some question about the legality of issuing a ticket through the mail. Is that still an issue?
So that's the red light camera. If I was to be a proponent of any one intersection, because you have such population going through there. We sit down there every other month. We run special operations down there at those intersections just for red light, but it takes 4 officers. 1 officer calling out violations, and 3 officers stopping. Different cars, so we stack them up as sheets. The moment we leave, they're violating the law. I mean, there's just no way for us to stay down like that. And the way the intersection is designed, it's very difficult, nearly impossible for the one officer to do that. It's a legislation position. Unlike looking at a stop sign, so many moving parts down there. So, and, right here in front of the high school, we're on radar, this is a difficult location. For the city. I'll be glad to take it.
What have you seen from kind of the feedback from cameras and like where they post what speed you're going? And then one, two was that you are going 35 minutes, 25.
So we actually, Mr. Flippin, they had a project up there on Lakeview, and there's 2 signs that are supposed to be coming for that particular area that we do. If we have a problem on Lakeview with speeding, high speed, so we're going to incorporate into that project speed signage way. I think that is probably a better use of resources.
Like I know, for example, condo here, and many times someone complains to you that they are, it is what it is, teenagers racing over. I mean, 50, 60 miles an hour right before it merges into one lane. If you have a problem with those little visual signs up there, and then trying to do the high school.
But I mean, that's probably an outlier.
Right.
We actually didn't have that problem when in our neighborhood when they temporarily put the sign up. They did have some people racing and trying to see what's going on, but they didn't.
Yeah, like I said, I go to that between the high school and Tuscany. That stretch, they fly.
And we had a pretty significant bus accident.
Yeah.
I remember each year, so.
I was just did not make attention.
I mean, they're just, at some point, personal accountability for folks to not speed. We issue citations regularly. So, Captain Johnson's here, he's in charge of all the folks that are doing that. So we, especially during daylight, and we put it out there in the school. He's got to get up here, girls get up here at like 6:30 in the day. But we just can't be, we have other responsibilities, we just can't be everywhere. But we do make this a priority.
Do you think there's anything else can be done because they're crosswalk? I think that's the issue right here that stops the traffic, obviously. And what I call milling across the leisure. But beyond that, I know, I want to say 2 or 3 people have been struck by a vehicle over the years. And so if we don't do something, are we setting ourselves up for a liability? Because when something does happen, say you have a fatality at the pedestrian, and then they look back and say, well, you had 2 or 3 issues of this in the past, and would it be done correct? I think there's any potential there for.
I'll let the sure comment on that as more is, but I would say that the problem really is, it's not when the crossing guard's out there.
Right.
It's those late running students.
That's right.
As they shoot across, and then you have, everybody's been out there and seen it, friction to your stomach. You see that left lane stop. And then they're coming from the opposite direction. Here comes traffic, thinking that it's open. After the crossing guards let everybody through. So, a more permanent solution is just somebody out there all the time, making students wait or hit some sort of button to look, maybe a stoplight. I think a crossing, like a crosswalk light, red light that stops it.
It does. Yeah, because it is hard to see, I will say that.
Especially if it's raining or something like that.
For that. And I don't know if any other methods, I know, like you said, there was an idea for tunneling.
That was just something I sold to the freshman.
I know. But there was talk in the past about or a bridge going over or something like that. Personally, I think the tech center should have been added to the back of the high school, and I would correct it all. Because get the room there, use plan, whether this tech center is now, or sports, but be as it may, it's already been in place. But I'm just worried about something in the future, potential liability if somebody really is perfect. I'll leave it.
Any other questions for Sean? Thank you, Chief. Good. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Should that company
Financial
recommend
update.
with such a low rate?
It's a, but they, I'm sorry, but they're looking to, well, that's how they do it at no cost to us. Audit them.
Well, that's good that we have citizens that
Yeah.
follow.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
If anybody ever needs to get in touch with me, please, you know how to run on.
Just speed through.
All right, Mr. Smith, you have financial update?
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to our finance director, Tina Sadler. She has a handout that I put a few slides, and she'll be able to brief you on several financial related.
As you guys know, we still are running in 3 fiscal years right now, so we are trying to close out fiscal year 2023. We have provided, I think, the true up. We've gone through it a few times, but I just wanted to give you guys an update on the fiscal year reconciliation between the transfer for the city and schools. So the first slide actually shows as a breakdown the way that we see it. So the first section is going to be the revenue that's specifically designated to the schools. The second section that's listed as courts is actually that 4 cents per 1,000 real estate revenue plus the 1 cent meals tax, with some interest and debt reduction due to the courthouse that's added in as a revenue source there. And then the third line is going to be the expenditures, which are the principal and interest on debt, on the 2012 interest and principal on debt. And then the totals at the bottom. So as we go through that, the city budget is the first column, and I only showed the school portions of the revenue and expenditures as opposed to the citywide pieces of that. So for those 6 revenue sources, the city budget was $22,816,300, with the court piece being $1,159,691. The debt expenditure negates at $763,765 for a total budget amount of $23,212,226. This is slightly different than the revenue numbers that were given to the schools at the beginning of FY, or for budgeting purposes at FY23. This is the final numbers that went into the city budget. So they are slightly different from those numbers. The actual revenue received was $25,302,157 for the school piece. For the courts, it was $1,379,885. That we right on the money on that one. And so the total was $25,918,277, with a difference overall of $2,706,051. So how does that kind of translate to the true up itself? So the calculated actual total at the bottom, the $25,918,277 is the number that you'll see carried forward to the second slide. So this actually shows the actual year-to-date transfer, which at this point we've transferred everything except for the true up amount. This number, this $23,876,045, is based on the number that was given to the schools for budget purposes, divided into the 12 payments. And I think it's actually off by about 4 cents, but pretty close. So that's what was actually transferred to the schools and revenues. The calculated actuals, that number carried forward the $25,918,277, which gave a preliminary increase to the school transfer of $2,042,232, and then we trued up the actual school share of the CSA costs, which obviously is a by service cost, so we never know the exact number on that one. And so the expenditure to the school that was in addition to that was $65,992, and so we still owe the schools for FY '23, a transfer of $1,976,240. And I just kind of wanted to stop there and kind of have a conversation. Last year, because we were also late with the city portion of the true up, we actually applied those excess funds towards the expenditures for, I think it was the school resource officer, the attorney, and for the CSA piece. And we had expended it until it was exhausted, and then what was left was the $65,992. We're again later this year than we were last year, so I just wanted to have a conversation with you guys. Do you guys anticipate that we would do the same thing this year and then true that up with an additional payment if we need to, or how do you see that payment coming?
Speaking what we've done in the past, we've always treated up the next fiscal year. There's never been like that transfer of payment. I'm fine with continuing the practice of taking out of, the 1.9, what we would owe you, and then you all transmit the difference if there's any.
And then getting back on track next year with the
Yes.
traditional way that we've done
Yes.
the true up as well.
Yes.
Either which direction. I'm definitely amenable to that as long as that's consensus.
I'm fine with whatever works best for you guys.
Okay.
On each side.
And then if there's additional funds left from that $1,976,000 based on what your expenses are, then we would at that point in time.
Correct.
Yes. that would be a suggestion. Okay. Thank you for that. I did want to make sure we were on the same page there before we followed through with that. So, that being said, that ends 2023 stroke. Does anybody have any questions so far on those numbers?
Okay. Before you move on, I just want to say that when we finalized our year-end numbers, we already had contributed like $172,000 towards CSA. So I didn't want the board to think that CSA was only 65,000. It was actually like 213. I think.
Correct. And so this was just what wasn't covered through that true up.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
Thank you for that clarification. So moving forward to FY '24, as we are quickly approaching year end, just wanted to give everybody an update on the revenues. We went ahead and did that as of the third quarter with some additional notations. So what I did was I combined both the school portion and the court into one budgeted amount by revenue source. And so for the city budget for the annual portion to the schools, that first column lists the amounts by real estate, then personal property, meals tax, lodging. I think everybody can see it for themselves what the numbers are, but the total ended up being $25,978,794 from the city's actual budgeted amount that was passed. And then our year-to-date actual so far in the next column with a total of $15,207,863. I went ahead and did a percent collected year-to-date based on the budget so that you can kind of see some of the revenue sources like our business occupational license looks like it's at 98.9%. So you think you're well ahead because you expect to be up 75%, but really those tend to happen at the first part of the calendar year. So that probably is going to be pretty close to the actual number. Meals tax, we've been pretty fortunate that that's right on target. Personal property and real estate are a little bit more difficult because of the annual amounts versus and when the due dates are. So I just kind of put a note at the bottom. Even though we're just under 50% for real estate and at 38% for personal property, we do project with the budget amount of $11,795 approximately for real estate, we're actually projecting actual collections of about $12.2 million. Just based on our due date has now passed for that, it was the 15th, and so we have some pretty good actual numbers at this point. For personal property with the school portion being budgeted about $2,350, we're actually looking at a little bit less than that at the 1.77. So, and we have done those billings as well. We just haven't, they're not due until 6/5, but we did that in the 95.
just so that we can see where we were actually and compare based on the type of revenue source and the time.
So the projected down at the bottom is the school, just the school.
Just the
not
school portion, correct. I tried to make it so that it at least fell in line with what you would expect.
Between those two, it looks like we'll fall about $100,000.
Yeah, one offsets the other a little bit, but not quite all.
More concerning seems to be the lodging and sales. Is that seasonal? Like, do we expect an uptick in that?
Yeah, I think that we will see an uptick seasonally as we come into the summer months, as well as we do have an extra hotel online that came online in October, November-ish, I think is, but that one is also an extended stay. So of course, if it goes over the limit of days, then you don't actually get the lodging tax for that. But I do think we'll see a slight uptick in that.
Plus, those are trailing somewhat, right,
They are.
from a previous month, month or so in time, however the cycle rotates.
Right, so they have until the 20th of the following month to actually submit for the prior month, so they do trail by a month or so, and some of them even more depending on when the hotel submits there. Just because they're due that day doesn't mean it's always submitted that day.
Maybe that is around 75, we don't.
Probably not.
Sales tax as well.
Correct. And sales tax is actually lagging by about 2 months instead of 1. They normally fall about a month, but we've been seeing it lag about 2 months. Sales tax actually has come back from the state, so I guess it's the state that's the delay at this point. So we will definitely be looking at accrual based on the lag time that's on there.
And sales tax has been a big topic of discussion in our regional budget because districts are not seeing the sales tax that they used to see, and that's something I've been wanting to do, just to see where we are.
Well, with our lag, I think because we have to do that 45-day accrual, you're seeing the effects of it being taken out, but not the effects of the end of the year coming back in. So I think the sales tax will probably come pretty close to collection, and based on the month over month, we kind of compare it year to year, month over month. We're seeing a higher collection at this point. We're seeing about an 11% increase over month to month. So I think we'll be fine with the sales tax. In fact, we might see a little bit higher.
How does the state make good with the tax change from August?
I'm not quite sure how that really works. I will think.
Any questions for Tina? Y'all get your final numbers from the state now that they passed it?
Sorry, the last that we did get some estimates from FAST. The last I heard, the governor's calculable, the budget office, there was a formula issue with the at-risk, and so we're still waiting. And I heard that it probably be the end of May before we get the calculable with the numbers.
I was just curious to how close your estimate.
We are, we'll just fully plan on putting that, whatever additional revenue we get from the state, we're just gonna put it in contingency. So we budgeted based on your all's additional funds based in this presentation. We did some adjustments there and then determined we would take whatever additional money we got from the state and put it in contingency to continue funding our salaries.
Just out of curiosity, with the, there's funding from the state to give teachers a raise, is that correct? Did they indicate how far out in the out years that goes, or is that a one-time shot and then all of a sudden the locality has to pick it up, or is that a continuous throughout the
So when the state says, they provide in this upcoming biennium, they're doing 3% each year, and they fund 3% of SOQ positions. And then we, you know, I think the overall desire is that you honor 3%, you know, for the non-SOQs. But they do match some funding, it's just not, it's not what it costs. But
So we're seeing 3% for this acute for the next 2 years based on that budget, and then the next budget shortens that, but.
right, and we provided the 3% minimum already in our budget.
And our SOQ positions are about 60%. So we have about 40% that we have to make up.
Not just non-teacher positions, right, that would cover non-teacher.
It covers some.
I mean, you don't like literally get person for, so every SOQ position isn't necessarily funded from the state. They do a overall throughout the entire state and determine how many we get. So weird.
Any other questions? Thank you. Any other questions for Steve? Do you want to give us a really quick update on the audit? Where we are?
Sure, I can do that. So what we've had issues with the audit this year, for the most part, besides the delay due to the transition between finance directors, is that when we did our system conversion from the legacy system to Munis, the beginning balances and the trial balance do not tie. And so we're trying to find the discrepancies there. What we were having to do is go back to the old system and account by account, go through and see where the true up issues are, and being able to actually identify what it was that, because in some cases it just went to the wrong account, in some cases we don't know where the number actually came from due to the way that the system converted. And so that's been a lengthy process. We're pretty close with that. I think probably one more day's worth of work will get us at least within what they consider, what the auditors consider material values. And we did also have a in that transition where the third-party vendor system didn't connect to the Munis system and the revenues, and so the revenues were all kind of put into a holding account, but nobody ever went back and fixed that. So we've been working on that as well with the billing and collections office to be able to resolve that as well. It was approximately $172,000. It wasn't a huge dollar amount, but to get it in the right buckets was quite an undertaking as well. And so we've been in constant communication today with share calls and that kind of thing with the auditors to get them to a point where they can feel comfortable with our numbers and where we ended up. We had to do some one-sided journal entries to be able to get that there. And so we're looking at hopefully around June 15th. We originally were very optimistic that we would finish on by May 31st, but just haven't been able to get to the position where the auditors feel comfortable, because once we get to our point, they have another 2 to 3 weeks that they will have to do to get to the point where we actually have our actor. So working diligently, basically it's me and one other staff member who, and then the former finance director has hopped in when she could, but of course she has a full-time job as well and has dealt with some medical issues as well. So working diligently to get it done, feel pretty comfortable, and have learned quite a bit about the system in the process, that's for sure.
Going back on the 3%, that's one of the challenges that I feel like we have within the school system is Richmond is very quick to put out there and saying we gave teachers a 3% raise without necessarily articulating that's only for 60% of, like 60% of the funds, and so that creates an expectation. So like we definitely have to meet that because of what's been put out there. But then we have to figure out where the funding comes from our side to truly make that fair contribution to the staff and keep up with the other counties.
Any other financial questions?
Oh, and I just want to add, so when she finishes on June 15th, the auditors are coming on the 17th for
Yes.
her fiscal year.
Yes, so I will not get a break, but maybe a day and a half, because we will have our initial preliminary audit on the 17th. So I did see Travis at BGFOA, and I kind of went like this, and he started laughing, but yeah, so they definitely are familiar with us at this point.
But I will say the auditors have indicated to us, other localities, that converted over to facing the same issues as we are. And make that conversion, you're always going to look for something.
He said that it happens even if there's a total corporation, a lot of times there's still that conversion issue that happens. And even though it sounds really dire that we still don't have our act published yet, we're not alone either. There are about 30 other localities that have issues as well.
Well, thank you for your hard work.
We're trying.
Appreciate it. I know, I mean, we put in a new system. It's difficult in a small office to take on such a mammoth project in the system. The advantage is you learn it, right? You get such an incredible understanding.
And I think that first year after you implement is a difficult one as far as finding all the places where you didn't plan for issues to happen, receivable accounts don't quite tie, that kind of thing. But I will say that the former director of finance, Lisa, she actually did a really good job. She came in behind somebody else's work and came in the middle of an implementation and then tried to work forward from there. So it was not an easy undertaking to begin with, even if you had continuity with director of finance. But with the changes in the multiple finance directors, for her to be able to get that implemented was definitely a feat in and of itself.
All right, last call for finance. Seeing none, we'll move on to the last topic. Turn over to you, Steve, and looking to the future.
Yep, so I'll open on a comment on this. So this is really looking at our school infrastructure, our school buildings. It's a monumental task in front of us. And so this is something that we don't believe happens overnight. Like, this is not something that we're going to just say, like, we've got to do this immediately. But it's one of those things that I feel like if we don't get on a path now, we're going to end up in a situation where we're kind of in dire need of doing something very quickly. And so this is to be proactive and work together between the schools and the city around what is kind of a long-term plan to really drive, making sure that we have the right school buildings, the right infrastructure for the city.
So, a little help from folks. I prepared just a few slides and I'm just going to run through them. Last time I showed them there, must have lost connectivity. But anyway, you have a copy. And so, the first slide, I'm fine, Colleen. Oh, there we go.
Going here.
Okay, so anyway, I'm going to start from the bottom right corner. So start with Tussing, 49 years old, then Lakeview, 55 years old. So those two schools, as we're thinking about them, the enrollment is significant at both of those. And on an annual basis, we are looking to make sure that we have plenty of space for our students. And, there was some discussion at the beginning of this year, around that. We'll continue to evaluate it. I know that in the Tussing district, there's some new houses being built. And, that's just something we're going to keep our eye on, keep our finger on the pulse of that. North is in pretty good shape in terms of capacity. The middle school is our oldest school. It's 70 years old. Of course, the tech center was built in 1981. And then the high school in 64. And so, the discussion comes. I guess it's not talking. So the next slide there is a high school in our future 5 to 10 years down the road. And, it feels scary to think about talking about this almost sometimes, because who around the table has ever been part of building a new high school in a small community with limited funds? Probably none of us, but, it's sort of like I always told my kids that play ball, you can't hit the ball if you don't swing the bat, right? And so if we don't start the conversation somewhere, just like Steve said, then we end up being nowhere when it really comes time to do something. And so, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to at least start saying the words out loud and to start hopefully thinking together with the city council and the community about what this would entail. There are a lot of pieces and a lot of important considerations, and I don't know why the screen's not on the same page I'm on. Okay, but why would we even consider it? One is our middle school is near the end of its building life. Just last week, we had a pipe burst in the ceiling outside of the school counseling office in the middle of the day. And so you have water pouring down. And it's just, the pipes are old. They're gonna eventually burst or what have you. When you go around to other schools in the area, you see some of the modern facilities, and it's really cool spaces for kids to learn. The other piece that I think about when I think about a city our size and having only one high school, it really is kind of the hub of the city. It's kind of the center of the city, and it's a really important facility for the city that's used by a lot of folks. And I really believe that having a new high school or a modern high school would attract families to our city. I think those are just things to think about. So as we look at areas of major consideration, and these are just things that the board during a work session just kind of brainstormed, and we had lots of chart paper and lots of discussion, but we kind of whittled it down to just 4 main things. We'd have to consider, where would you build it? Where would the money come from? How do you engage the community in a productive way? And talk about all of the factors that people would be concerned about. And then what would be the plan for a school that would meet future needs? And so just rolling on through, we think about a couple different properties. We have the middle school property, so the current middle school. So a consideration would be that you build a new high school, perhaps behind the tech center, and then move the middle school kiddos up to the current high school and make that the middle school. And then you'd have that property down there to do something with. Or could you build a high school on the middle school property? I mean, those are all things that would have to be kind of ferreted out. So the school in Troy, like I said, he's under the weather today, but he has some really detailed diagrams about the property behind this building and about what part of it the school owns and what the city owns. And so I think some of that conversation would certainly have to be with the city about, what would that look like with this? Purchasing that property or using that property, or what would we do with the middle school property once it was, the high school was completed? Lots of topics for discussion. And the next is financial planning. So Troy had, I believe it was Mosley, do just like a rough estimate based on the number of students that we currently have. I think we were projected for a high school of up to 1,200. The general estimate is $110 million. That's a lot more than I have in my pocket today, right? And so we think about that and, how in the world do you come up with that amount of money? And, one consideration is, and I don't know if this will come around in next year's General Assembly, would be that localities, if the General Assembly passes it, could add a 1% sales tax to fund school construction. But that would be a referendum. I mean, that would be something that citizens of Colonial Heights would certainly have to vote on and approve. We can certainly look to see if there are any grants or government dollars available. And then, the other thing is just good old-fashioned savings to get started. So, what can the school division do right now in terms of putting money aside and the CIP? And then, once some of our debt payments are taken care of, could we have a little pot of money to get started with over the next few years? And then again, debt issuance. A lot of different things to think about the financial planning of it. I'm not a finance person, but I think we would certainly need to get some thoughts around the financial end of it, what that would look like for us. For me, I think that the next slide is one that's super important, and I think that is, if City Council and the school board decided, they wanted to work together on this, having been from here and knowing tons of people, I think it would be so important to engage the community to help them understand the need for a new high school and what that would look like, you know, having traffic studies done and those sorts of things, to make sure that people's properties are considered and that, you know, that we project it well. And, you know, and what would that look like if you had a high school here, evening activities, football games, baseball games, and whatnot? I think we would have to do some listening to the community. So, you know, those are just, I mean, that is like a super condensed 5-minute summary of lots of thinking and some discussion, but I want to toss it back to Steve to kind of talk about what the thoughts are as we might consider moving forward.
Our first purpose of this is actually kind of get general consensus of we can't go another 20 years expecting the school to keep surviving, like that something has to be done. And so again, like what I said, open up with, this isn't saying we're gonna have a new high school in 3 years. It's how do we actually get a long-term plan? What is our first step to actually start getting us to solving the financial problems, solving the space problems, making sure that we're all working together on that. So that's kind of what I really want to get on this initial conversation is kind of along and said, this is a problem that we agree that we need to solve. And then the second piece would be like, assuming that we all agree that we need to solve this, how do we start forming a joint committee between the city council and the school board to start going after and coming up with an approach on how to solve it, start answering these questions about site, community involvement, and finance. So I open up for questions and thoughts at this time.
I have a question. Go ahead. Either way. Go ahead, Bud. No, I'll take it.
I'll play traffic. Go ahead.
Thanks. Agree. A couple of things. Are the plans still on the table as far as the renovations? Because you just had the fine arts done. I understand the cafeteria was going to be next. And also in that plan was the security coming in the front door. So security's done, that's right. And the fine arts is done.
Well, if we end up moving the middle school, and correct me if I'm wrong, up to the high school, those upgrades are gonna need to be done anyway. Especially like the cafeteria coming up.
So yeah, I think that's part of this conversation is rather than just, let's stop doing this incremental, and I shouldn't say stop, but like, I would want to reevaluate those incremental improvements in light of a long-term plan, because I think the fine arts and the entryway were no regrets, like those would have been needed to be to that building if we turn it into the middle school.
I'm not
anyway.
opposed to that.
But like, I think the cafeteria is a great example of, we should look at that in terms of, like, if we agree that we're moving to a new high school, what is the need of the cafeteria to serve as a middle school cafeteria versus the high school cafeteria? And that might be very different needs and have hopefully lower costs with that. But like, but if we don't think about that, then right now we're trying to invest into it as a high school cafeteria.
Because see, the thing, because it looks, and again, I'm just discussing this. I have no, I haven't come to any conclusion or anything. We're just talking. But by the same token, we're talking about plans for a new high school and middle school and so forth, with, you know, the age of them and so forth. But also with those, that means we would have a new building plus we would do these renovations, like we mentioned, if we do change the cafeteria and so forth. So really that's added cost on top.
Well, I'm not necessarily, I think that's what we would say is we would reevaluate what is needed for the cafeteria. We've been having conversations around, is it really the full design that was there? Is it really just like the equipment upgrades, which would be much lower cost? Like, again, that's where I think this committee comes together to say, let's do this wisely so that we get into a position that we're not, I would hate to upgrade the high school with the auxiliary gym, great new cafeteria, and then 5 years from now say, middle school is going to collapse and we got to build a new high school anyway.
The big concern I had as well is on the belief that high school will possibly a middle school rather than doing, say, complete renovation. I know the cafeteria is just done down there, but I don't want to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in that middle school when it's almost time spent.
Well, yeah, and it's same with the high school. But that would be a question I had. And then what are the possibility of grants coming into it? I know you mentioned possibly a referendum for 1% tax, but I think we need to look at it real closely because we're talking about $100 million easily for that. So these funds, are there a lot of grants available for that?
I think that's what we have to get that committee going and investigating and speaking to our representatives to actually see what is available. They can know about that.
And the third thing is, the city itself, we've got aging infrastructure right now that these water pipes, sewer pipes, and utilities, so forth, are 100+ years old. And we're looking at 190 million dollars for that at this time, which is steady growing. So it's a balancing act of, we've got to serve the citizens as well. And I would love to see it in high school as well as middle school. But at the same token, without a lot of grants and a lot of support somewhere else, this would be pretty tough to do. But I'm just throwing this out there, for the discussion.
So what do you think?
Yes, I have a question. Now, I realize that the state and federal regulations and requirements placed on school divisions seem to increase every year. And that remedial education or student education is something that is being passed on to the localities system year after year after year. I understand that. And consequently, you can anticipate a increase in cost of educating each student, whether it's 10,000, 11,000, 15,000, whatever it is, that amount is most likely to increase rather significantly. My question is the student population. We hear a lot about the brain of the American population, and we read often about the median or average age of the Colonial Heights citizen, which seems to be rising steadily. My question is our student population growing? To what extent it is growing, and whether it's growing in the elementary or the later students, because there is, just as the superintendent indicated, Colonial Heights has always had a excellent school system that has attracted people, and that's a good thing, and that it brings tax revenue, it keeps us healthy. But it's also not such a good thing when they come with many students, some students that have special needs, that creates an expense for the school division. And I guess my question is, when we are talking about spending tens of millions of dollars for buildings, I would like to know to what extent, and we can't predict the future, I understand things do change, but are the demographics in Colonial Heights and is the anticipated growth of the student population sufficient to justify such construction?
So I would say we're going to be in a position where the middle school is not going to be a viable option for long term. So I think regardless of where we go from a population perspective, like we are going to need a building to support a middle school population, a building to support the high school population.
But you need a middle school, you have to have incoming students that are graduating from pre-elementary schools. And that would anticipate a wave of students coming from 3 schools into 1, and that would seem to act as a justification for middle school.
Yes.
And my question is, do we seem to be having older students coming in? Do we seem to have students coming in at a very early age and then going through life? Again, it ebbs and flows down through the years.
Yeah.
So I would want to have some kind of understanding or perception as to how the school population would change and justify whatever development.
So I would say, I do not, like, from what I'm seeing in the flow numbers, I do not see a long-term change of 3-1-1. Like, I think we're always going to need, at least for a foreseeable future, 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school.
Okay.
So I don't see us losing populations to the point where we could combine the middle school and the high school into one. Again, that goes back into the fact that I believe that the middle school, that building, so it's kind of an interesting one thing we're saying that we need a new high school. We're actually replacing the middle school building as a functioning school, and building a high school and then moving the middle school into the existing high school. So we've maintaining the number of buildings that we have, knowing that one is ending its useful life.
Are we anticipating, is that where the proposal, the cost of removing the current middle school to ground level in order to construct upwards, or are we using the shell of the middle school to expand it and pass?
I think those are all things that I think the committee should be starting to investigate as the options. Like this is basically like day 0, minute 1 of this conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Middle school, if you were to build a new high school, the middle school would trans over to the high school, correct?
Yes.
I think before any type of decision of this caliber can be made, you have to do a study. And I don't know whether you have the in-house resources to do that, or whether it needs to be outsourced. I mean, you have to look at location of the new high school. Where would that be? I mean, it could be behind this building, or could they take this building and weave it into another building? There's a lot of decisions that would have to be made on that. The funding, obviously, is a big chunk. Where would that come from? When does the school and the city have debt reduction? Ours is 2032, I think, is a big reduction. A lot of questions, grants, like Mr. Wade said, from state and federal. Then what do you do with the middle school property? Do you sell it and then utilize those funds, sell to a developer, and utilize those to offset some of the costs of the new high school? But I don't think it hurts to do a study, then present that, and see how it all shakes out. But it's got to, Mr. Wood had a good point. Demographics, that would be part of that study. So now, can you do it in-house, or do you take it outside and get an outside consultant to do that? But I think that's, to me, that's where I would like to see it all start. Some type of detailed report. I mean, it's just like anything. You're going to buy a stock, you're going to look into how the stock's performing, you're going to look at the reports and so forth before you buy it. Or you're going to buy a car, you go on. I mean, this kind of magnitude of $100 billion is a lot. When you think about it, our overall budget's right around 110 million, and the school, a new high school, is 100. So a lot of thought, effort has to go into that study. So whether or not you could do it in-house, I don't know. But if you do it in-house, I mean, you're going to have teams that, in my opinion, one that focuses on funding love, one that focuses on location design, one that focuses on the redevelopment of the middle school area. So just food for thought. Yes.
I don't really think there's a question about whether we have to build a new high school or not. I think that's a definite, because the middle school is so aged that it's truly not functional anymore. I think this is an opportunity that in the future we could do away with the road crossing. We could possibly have a larger area for our football field. We could, put an athletic complex together somewhere. I think there are so many things that are viable. Of course, the main issue is the funding, but if we don't start planning for it now and looking at, maybe we just have a goal of 2032 and know that that's the year that we're going to have a bond or a referendum or whatever we have to do to raise those funds, because it's inevitable. We cannot continue to build our community, and sometimes it is a little embarrassing when people come to our football field and look across at that antiquated middle school. So I think it would be in the best interest of the city. I don't think there's any question that we need to get started. Whether we form a joint committee or you all handle the ball. I think that's something we definitely need to be proactive about and get rolling on.
I agree with
I agree
everything you
also.
said, I think that the city, at that magnitude of financial amount, the city has to be involved.
Oh, yeah.
It is,
And also, like you said, the options and the possibilities, knowing that this is going to be a reality, you can reconsider and think about your possible renovations and possible expansions on elementary schools or whatever. But the one thing, the first, besides financing, the first decision I think that would have to be made would be the location of the high school, because you can't move the kids to the high school without having a high school for the high school kids to go into. So we've got to, as you wisely put in here, determine where the best location would be. So I'm fully in favor of this.
I agree.
You know, the city has done a lot of things over the years, and I think we need to look at what we did. As an example, 1980, we built a health department. I realize the state probably put most of that money in. We built also in 1980, we built the library and also the school building, all in 1980, 81, in that area. So we've done it before. You know, we need to figure out how we did that. And then when we built City Hall, and we built courthouse
And the fire station.
and fire station. The courthouse was one of the biggest projects that we ever did in 2020.
23 billion.
And, you know, we figured that out, and we were, how in the world are we gonna do that?
Yeah, and that.
And it's almost, that debt's almost over with.
2032.
Yeah, so we can do it.
Yeah.
We just gotta figure out how we did all those other things.
That was raising the real estate tax rate by, I believe, either 4 or 5 cents per hundred. And that's where the primary funding came from the bonds. So if you are anticipating whatever year it's going to be, a magnitude of $100 million plus, and removal of the building, and perhaps renovation of another, I don't know what resources you would have available other than an increase in the tax rate on real estate, which is the largest revenue generator the city has. Consequently, I can anticipate that there would be significant resistance to that idea. And so a lot would have to go not into just planning, what is anticipated, but also to be able to have a justification that would require buy-in from the public.
Yeah, that's where I thought we really need to lean in heavy on debt reduction. I don't know what that amount is in 2032, and I don't know what the school is the magic number for you guys.
Mayor, I have one more comment. I saw a study recently of the housing per square foot for the area. Colonial Heights was one of the lowest. Believe it or not, we were very close to one of the lowest. Petersburg and Hopewell were below us, but Chesterfield was higher, Prince George was higher, all the others went. So I believe our housing is going to allow for younger families to begin to move in as some of our elderly people move on. So, which goes to your point about the demographics. It will be good to know, to be able to know that if we can predict.
Well, doing a study doesn't commit us to building a new high school. But does everybody agree that we need to do some type of study to determine location, funding, the avenues we can possibilities of redevelopment of the middle school area. I don't know, all that's all should be brought up. So,
I think the study is important, but have you ever commissioned a study for any project or public building that the agency that conducted the survey and analysis did not come back with a recommendation that was not only in favor of that, but also a recommendation of a construction that is significantly higher than what we may have anticipated? Never seen one. I'm certain there's some out there somewhere, but I've not ever seen a study that said, oh no, you can do more with less. I haven't seen it yet. It's possible.
So,
but just from council, just show of hands if you want to study them. You guys, do you think study should be done?
Yes.
From the school board side?
yeah, and I think we can, the school board and Troy and I can get together and come up with a strategy for the study, whether it's a comprehensive study or if it's divided up into segments, based on the things we've discussed. And certainly, I can kind of let y'all know our direction once we decide.
Now, do you think you could do that internally?
I think probably not.
Yeah,
I mean,
Start.
I don't think, yeah.
no, I think we have discussions
I think
about
you could-
direction, and then I
Yeah.
think we say, do we want one very big study by one person, or is it better to look, a study about the finances, a study about building usage, a study about other things. So I think, some of that is, perhaps even reaching out to some other school divisions who've recently built new high schools to see what their process was, to determine all of those factors for them.
If you could find a locality similar to ourselves, Manchester, what else? Who else would we always compare ourselves to?
Well, I think one thing that we also have to look at is the landlocked nature. So I think the challenge that we have as a city is we are fully developed, or 99% developed. And so you look like the way Chesterfield builds a new school, they saw some land and build a data center and they get their $100 million tax revenue and they throw up a school. We don't have that option.
And their surplus sometimes at the end of their budget's $100 million.
So I think we have to look at localities with the unique challenges that we have. And I've actually seen, I'm reading some things about this, like Williamsburg, Charlottesville, I've gotten into situations that I don't want us to be in, which is they end up giving up independence of their school system with like Williamsburg and James City County. Like, I don't want us to become part of Chesterfield County because we can't solve this. So,
yeah, wouldn't it be nice if, like the lottery money, the state would have interest-free loans for localities like our size, things of that nature. That takes a lot of change.
Well, we're very grateful for the time to have a discussion.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
To be able to at least have some thinking around the table here.
Yeah, I don't think you can go forward without having something for us to look at. And I think the study.
my fear is I just don't want to be at this point 10 years from now. I think this is how do we get something moving and do it strategically and move it forward, right?
So I guess the goal is your staff will look at how, who can possibly get inside.
Take a look and come up with a plan.
All right. Any other last comments or questions? We have a 6:30 back at the city hall, so, which is not going to be long, right? Essentially.
That's correct.
Well, this is great. Great to get together. It's been a long time coming. I know we had a lot of hurdles. Thank you so much for the hospitality and the food and dinner and arranging. I think it was a really good discussion. You all agree?
Yes.
Any other comments?
Thank you all for the ongoing partnership and the good relationship between the schools and the city right now.
Do we need to vote on suspending our meeting? All right. With that, thank you. And,
Move to adjourn?
no, we can't adjourn.
Right.